About a year has passed since the events of the Buu Saga. The terrifying Majin menace has been destroyed, and Earth has finally achieved peace. But will it last? Well, if your answer to that was anything other than hell no, I don't think you've been paying attention. The peace would eventually be broken, although not by some world-ending threat. That is, if you give him what he wants. Of course, I'm referring to the god of destruction, Beerus, as well as my overall favorite character in the entire series. Oh yeah, and his angel attendant Whis, who was never really a threat and, if anything, was on our side, trying to keep Beerus in check and make sure he didn't kill everybody, even if he wasn't trying super hard. Nonetheless, the dynamic duo would arrive on Earth in search of the Super Saiyan God, but they would come up short, at least for now. They'd find Super Saiyans and they'd find gods, but no one that was able to fit both categories. Goku would attempt to show off Super Saiyan 3 to Beerus and use it against him, although to no avail. Sure, he's incredibly powerful, for a mortal, although he is still nothing compared to the gods. With a simple 1-2 combo, Goku would be on the ground or reverted back to base and barely breathing. Since this version of the fight actually took place at Bulma's birthday, the rest of the Z-Fighters were able to see firsthand just how strong this god of destruction really was, and they probably shouldn't treat him as casually as they did in the original series. Now this doesn't mean they're going to be openly hostile right away. Goku is the one who suggested that fight, although they're not going to be as playful with him during the party games. They still do everything they can to keep the god of destruction entertained, although it's a lot more intentional here, making sure they don't mess up. It's like dancing in a minefield. One wrong step and everything goes boom. And with everybody focused on making Beerus happy, they'd keep Majin Buu in check, as well as hand-delivering the god buckets of pudding, avoiding a "that's my Bulma" situation. Not to say that you don't throw your own hat in the ring and get the chance to fight against Beerus, it's just in a more friendly situation, rather than believing he just murdered your wife and trying to get revenge. Just to be clear though, even if that did happen, much like in the actual fight, you wouldn't be able to do anything to the god of destruction. Sure, you're incredibly powerful, and in terms of raw power, probably similar to Super Saiyan 3 Goku, but we already saw what happened to him. And even your magic, which always seems to give you a leg up over your opponent, isn't enough here. You would try and slow down time to overcome his speed, but he's still too fast. You would attempt to use Force Spirit Fission to sap his power and add it to your own, but he's using God Ki, and you have no experience with that. You would create several identical copies of yourself, each with equal power to the original, then charging up all of your power into one final blast and shooting it at the destroyer. However, much to your horror, he would simply stand there and tank the attack. It does absolutely nothing to him, and he would ask if that's all you got. To which you respond by giving up. Despite not yet finding the Super Saiyan God, Beerus says he won't destroy the Earth. Mostly because of its amazing food, but at the same time, the strongest fighters in the universe, at least by what he can tell, are on this planet, so if he ever wants a proper challenge, he's going to get it from them. Though he does encourage you guys to try and find out everything you can about the Super Saiyan God, since he could change his mind and come back here at any time to kill them all. However, Vegeta would step forward, saying that he actually has an idea of how to give him a proper challenge right here and now. Obviously intrigued, Beerus would urge the Saiyan Prince to continue, although stating that if he's lying, then, well, he's getting erased. However, in an unlikely team-up, Boxa would be revealed to be standing behind the prince, saying that she discovered a way to increase the Saiyan's power many times over. It's a brand new power unlike anything the universe has ever seen, and it comes from a Saiyan wielding the power of a near-omnipotent wizard. And as it turns out, Boxa's not too far off. Having learned directly from you, she would be one of the most powerful wizards to ever exist in Dragon Ball, having long since surpassed the likes of Babidi and Bibidi. Getting bored of the exposition and not wanting to wait any longer, Beerus demands they bring forth the power they believe to be the Super Saiyan God. And not wanting to risk the wrath of the God of Destruction, Boxa begins to hastily chant, flowing all of her magical energy into Vegeta, whose body would begin to increase in size ever so slightly, as well as buffeting out a bit and having his hair turn a shade of pink. The clothes covering his upper half would be destroyed as hair begins to grow out all around his body, a sort of ruby red fur that we can only assume adds for extra protection, or maybe just because it looks cool. You scold Boxa, saying that the only part of his clothes that better come off is the shirt. Anymore, and you guys are going to have a long and awkward conversation about age gaps. Trying to stop any other disgusting ideas from entering your head, Boxa would explain that the only reason she was training with Vegeta is because she doesn't have the same insane potential you do. If she wanted to grow like a Saiyan, she had to train with one. While sparring and working on combo moves, Boxa came to a discovery. The power that you and her wield, the Phoenix Flame form, isn't exclusive to you two. Well, it kind of is, but it's sort of a modification of an already existing transformation that anyone can achieve. The base form of this transformation is sort of like a magical version of Ultimate. It allows you to access all of your magical power and do basically anything. When you first unlocked this power, you needed to come back to life, so you did, at least for a short period of time. You needed enough power to beat Frieza, and it gave it to you in spades. When more threats arose, you needed to modify it to give you more strength, and you were able to. And obviously, Boxa wanted to see what this form could do without the mutation that made it Phoenix Rising. So she gave that power to Vegeta, and it allowed for him to mix all of his Saiyan forms together. The ferocious beastly strength of Great Ape, the unparalleled heroic might of Super Saiyan, and even unknowingly the divinity that comes along with Super Saiyan God. But Beerus is done with waiting. He doesn't care how this form came about, he just wants to fight it. He's done with the blabbing, it's clobbering time, and he runs in. The battle would be fierce, and since Vegeta didn't obtain this power through a ritual, at least not the same one from Battle of Gods, he doesn't have a time limit. He can keep going as much as he wants, and this power is his own, so he has no objections. The battle would be fierce and seemingly never-ending. The more power Beerus shows off, the stronger Vegeta grows in response. This new form allows him to be everything a Saiyan can be. A god, an unstoppable warrior, and most importantly, limitless. But although his power is without them, Vegeta's body definitely does still have restrictions, meaning he eventually runs out of stamina completely and is unable to fight even in base, let alone Super Saiyan 4. Although much like Super Saiyan God, Vegeta seems to have absorbed this power, meaning he's much stronger and Beerus might actually have a worthy rival. In fact, he might have a few, since there's more than a couple Saiyans here and there's 2 magic users, all of them should be able to unlock this power. But thankfully, the God of Destruction is satisfied for now, so he apologizes to Bulma for crashing her party and thanks everyone for the great time he had before heading home. The idea of Beerus terrifies you. He is practically unbeatable. His strength is so far above anything any of you have ever seen that even when delving into a new realm of power, Vegeta was still only scratching at the surface of how strong Beerus was. But the more you think about it, maybe a Saiyan could surpass Beerus. After all, Vegeta wasn't the strongest of them and he was able to grow incredibly quickly with that form. Maybe given a couple more years, he could actually get to Beerus's level. You decide to test this theory, wanting to have a failsafe just in case Beerus ever chooses to destroy the planet. You don't believe he will since he hasn't yet, although it's good to have a backup plan just in case. I've had this next plot point suggested many times throughout the series, but I've never really acted on it, since although I wanted to use your guys' suggestions, it really just didn't seem fair. It'd create an insane power creep and make an uninteresting story. But seeing as this is the last chapter to this story, seeing as this will be the final chapter in your story, and the fact there's not really much interesting you can do with the original story of Super, I've decided to allow this to happen. You and Broly would enter the hyperbolic time chamber. Immediately after entering the room, you and Broly would begin work on accessing Super Saiyan 4. Although, for right now, Broly just needs to master the first few variants of Super Saiyan. Thankfully though, that should only take a couple of months. With your added experience training with Saiyans, you'd be able to coach him into entering Super Saiyan 3 and mastering it before you guys even hit the 1-year mark. And really, there's no limit to how long you guys can stay in there. You have the ability to alter time. You should probably be able to de-age yourself and Broly. But this isn't one of those stories where you go in there and leave after spending a millennia training. You do still want to see your family, and going 3 whole years on the outside without doing that would probably suck. However, 3 years on the inside is way more manageable, since it's actually only 3 years. And like I said, the first of these years would be spent mastering Super Saiyan, which Broly is able to do pretty easily, at least relatively speaking. It took him a year, but he's able to remove the stamina drain from Super Saiyan 3, as well as making sure he doesn't lose control. Sure, he might not have any God Ki, but with how fast he grows, he doesn't need it. He could probably fight Beerus to a standstill, at least while the God of Destruction is still suppressed. But he wouldn't need to be holding back as much as he would for someone like UI Goku in the Tournament of Power. Yeah, Broly is that strong. Let's not forget, he was fighting Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta in the movie with really no training. Now, as to how you compare, you really don't. Even his base form makes you need to rely on all of your magical tricks and full power to stand a chance. Not to say that you're weak, the fact you're able to keep up with his base is still impressive, but once he transforms, it's over. Now, don't worry, you're working on something to bridge that gap, but for right now, he is definitely ahead. But this gap does grow, tenfold in fact, after he accesses Super Saiyan 4 with your help. You aren't upset or anything, but you are a little jealous. Saiyan genetics seem to go crazy. The final year of this training, at least for Broly, would be spent mastering Super Saiyan 4. Not a particularly difficult task, but definitely time-consuming. For you though, it'd be different, although not too far off. Super Saiyan 4 is basically everything a Saiyan can achieve. We've already gone through this, but what happens when you take it a step beyond that? Humans aren't a particularly special species in Dragon Ball, at least when it comes to fighting. Sure, they can grow strong enough to battle in the Tournament of Power, but they're definitely not the highest ranking fighters. No, that's the Saiyans, the Frost Demons, whatever Jiren is. But they all do share a common ancestor. Everything does in Dragon Ball, except for the gods and angels, of course. Most of everything in the multiverse ties back to Majin Raimus, the first ever sorcerer, and the one who created the universes. You believe that if you can tap into the same magic that he had, the same level of expertise and ultimate power he attained, you believe that if you're able to tap into the same level of magic that he had, the power that created everything, then you would be able to create a new transformation, one that harnesses the full potential of not just yourself or your race, but every single living thing that has ever existed. Your strength would rise to an unobtainable, unrivaled level. You'd be able to protect everybody you love forever. But can you do it? Well, not as you are, but you do believe you have a way. Specifically after learning of an artifact that should be able to boost your magical prowess to even the levels of Majin Raimus. You'd ask Broly if he's learned how to control Super Saiyan 4 yet, at least to the point where he won't rampage when he uses it, and he says yeah. He doesn't believe any level of power would ever make him do that, at least not again. With all of the experience inside of the hyperbolic time chamber, he's basically as controlled as the likes of Goku and Vegeta. And you say that's perfect, but you do have a second question. Want to go on a road trip? Without wasting any time, both you and Broly would exit the time chamber, before then opening a portal to the demon realm and hopping inside. You wouldn't need to go through all of the trials and tribulations that the Daima gang did, and instead you would just arrive at Goma's castle. Although if you had to fight the Tamagami, well, it wouldn't go well for them. Majin Ku would still be born because he's the coolest thing that Dragon Ball has ever made, and you would fight Goma. Whether he has the third eye or not, it's not really a problem. You'd kill him and take the artifact for yourself. I guess if the third eye allows him to grow on the same scale as Broly, then this could be a pretty fun fight, but I have other things I plan to focus on instead, so yeah, he dies. With the third eye obtained, you would strip it of all the magic used to create it, then absorbing that into your own being and becoming practically omnipotent for a second there. But sadly, this power was fleeting. If you were to move even a single muscle using that power, it would all but disappear. Instead, you would regulate it. Rather than treating this like a battery that would eventually run out, you instead apply it to your potential, allowing for you to understand unlimited power and how to eventually reach that yourself. You would continue practicing this for the next couple of months, and after a while, your training would be interrupted, as you get the opportunity to test out this new strength. Frieza has returned, although not from the dead. Instead, he just came back from a very long training trip. Basically, after everything that went down with Cell, Frieza left. He wasn't vengeful, he wasn't hateful, he was upset, but he wasn't going to take that out on anybody. Instead, he went off and basically became a hermit, Master Roshi style. And through years of training, he felt it was finally time to confront his feelings. And I guess more specifically, confront you. For those of you watching in the full story, it's probably been about an hour since we last talked about Frieza. And for those of you watching in a part-by-part basis, it's probably been a couple of months, so let me give a quick refresher. Frieza was reincarnated, and so were you. The two of you went together since Frieza wouldn't go willingly, and you dragged his soul down there. You retained your memories, but he didn't, so even though you were able to get back up to full and in your adult body in no time, he wasn't, and once he found out what had happened through Cell explaining it, he was pissed. Well, sort of. He was upset, yes, because he was being denied a part of himself, but he was conflicted because that part was pure evil. And he's not even sure if he would have wanted to be told about this. He was lied to, but he understands why, so after taking years to cope with these feelings, he's finally ready to reconnect with the group. And that just so happens to start with a sparring session between you and him going all out. You'd start out in base, and surprisingly, you two are pretty even. You're shocked because of just how intense the training you've been doing is and how effective it was. But remember, Frieza's potential is nothing to laugh at, and after years of training, yeah, he's pretty dang strong. After a while, Frieza would display his new transformation, although instead of being the golden form, it's something more amber-colored, as he was basing it off of Phoenix Rising rather than Super Saiyan. You would then enter the form that Frieza's transformation was based on, and the two of you are still fighting evenly, which is pretty shocking to Frieza. He could have sworn he had grown billions of times stronger than he was before. Nobody should be able to keep up with this. But then you tell him that you're not even the strongest person you know, as Broly is still a bit ahead of you, and Vegeta might be even further along than him, just based on the fact he's training with the gods and angels themselves. Rather than letting this bog him down, Frieza decides to find inspiration in this fact, asking if he can train with you, that way you two can surpass everybody else, and of course you agree. Everything is looking up, and a year and a half would pass as your training continues. But then, a new challenge would arise, unlike anything any of you had ever seen before. The battle between Universe 6 and 7 would still take place, the tournament, although it's not really a tournament in this story, as it was simply a 1v1 sparring session between the strongest person from Universe 7 and Universe 6, Hit versus Vegeta. An impressive battle nonetheless. An impressive battle, yet still nothing exceptional, and Vegeta was the clear victor, so Zeno got no sort of entertainment from this, but he was still watching. He's decided, after all this time, that he's finally ready to reset the universes. Yep, you heard me right. Zeno is planning a full-scale annihilation of all 12 universes. Well, sort of. He's not just going to put his hands in the air and get rid of everything like he did in Future Trunks' timeline. Instead, he's going to have a bit of fun with it. It's also a chance, a very small chance, for some of the universes to survive, as Zeno would command all of the gods of destruction to kill every single being in their universe, and if they fail, well, then they're erased instead. The gods all believe that the Omni King is playing some sort of a practical joke at first, although his seriousness is proven when he destroys Universe 11 in its entirety, Belmont included. He already had a God of Destruction candidate on the way, and somebody even stronger than that, so it wouldn't be very fun to watch Belmont get easily taken down and that universe survive with practically a free pass. Now knowing the seriousness of this situation, Gods of Destruction would begin spinning out of control, going around and killing entire planets full of mortals like a man crushing an anthill. The universe that undoubtedly had it the worst was none other than 6, as Champa was almost as strong as Beerus, but his mortals were nowhere near close to Universe 7's. The Saiyans would be the first thing that Champa destroyed, as he knew they'd probably end up being the biggest threat, having seen what Beerus' Saiyans could do. He went to planet Sadala, had them recall all of their forces, acting as if he was going to reward them somehow. But instead, he pulled a Frieza, destroying the planet, except this time with the Hakai. Every single living being on the world would be destroyed without any chance of fighting back. Kale, Caulifla, Kaba, even King Sadala, who we've yet to see but is probably pretty strong. The only saving grace that the mortals have is that the gods of destruction don't have their angels by their sides, meaning that it takes them a while to be able to get from planet to planet. It means that the mortals have time to prepare, but it also means the gods of destruction can't get healed after each fight, instead having to recover on their own. This almost causes Champa to be killed by Hit, but after the time-skipping assassin is defeated, there's no hope left for Universe 6. His reward for killing literal trillions of people is an island paradise, an oasis in place of his universe where he can live in eternal bliss. He would be given a device that allows him to create any sort of food or furniture that he likes, but he still doesn't get his angel, meaning he's completely alone. Or at least he thought so, until one by one, all of the other gods of destruction arrived on this island. Well, except for Beerus. See, Beerus was the strongest of the gods of destruction, although through that strength he also bred competition. He looked for worthy opponents, rivals that could even push him to his limits, and he found them. Sadly, Vegeta was killed on his planet, and the Earth spent a great long while wondering where he is. You'd be concerned that Beerus had done something and you had no idea just how right you were. Not only was Vegeta slaughtered by the god of destruction, but so was each and every other living being in the universe until Beerus eventually got to Earth. See, Beerus didn't want to do this. Sure, he enjoyed destruction on a grand scale, but he had grown attached to Earth. He liked it. Not just its food and its fighters, but its people. It was a beautiful planet and he didn't want to see it destroyed. Sadly though, he would if he had to. And so, after arriving on the planet, he looked for all of the strongest fighters, wanting to get one last good battle in. Goku and Broly immediately rush over the second they feel Beerus' power arrive on the planet. Sure, they didn't know Vegeta was dead and that Beerus had done it, but after other planets started to lose their key signatures, and especially after Namek, they kind of got the gist of what was going on. You and Frieza had just gotten done training a couple hours before, so you tell him to go help the others, as you still need time to prepare for what's happening after Beerus is defeated. You didn't know about Zeno, but you thought it was pretty strange that the god of destruction was getting rid of everything that he ruled over. So you assumed that somebody else was telling him to. And since Whis was no longer in the picture, it meant that somebody stronger than the angels were giving these commands. But what happens after the god of destruction they sent out to do their dirty work is taken down? Well, they probably step in to finish things off. From an outside perspective, we know Zeno probably would just let them live, but you're not taking any chances, so you decided to prepare. Frieza, Goku, and Broly would be able to draw the fight out as long as you needed, although it was a bit difficult since Beerus was still a massive threat. Once you give them the go-ahead, they would combine their energies together and use one final attack to end the God of Destruction off once and for all. But all of you knew that wouldn't be the final hurdle. As Beerus' body fades away, the Grand Priest would arrive in the sky, congratulating all of you for being able to survive against a god of destruction, but then you teleport behind him, shouting out, "Toa no Shi!" Suddenly, the Grand Priest begins to disappear, evaporating similar to what happens when you're hit with a Hakai. The spell you cast was actually the progenitor of the God of Destruction's signature technique. It bypasses all defense and simply erases you. It would take Zeno a little while to notice the disappearance of the Daishinken, although once he does, he has a pretty calm reaction. After all, he was planning on remaking everything, so the Grand Priest was going to have to go eventually. Be replaced by something better. So instead of getting all upset about it, he sends his two guards to go handle whoever took out the Daishinken. You were looking into a spell to bring back Vegeta as well as all of the other fallen mortals in your universe when Zeno's guards arrive on the planet and start causing all kinds of chaos. With a flash of brilliant white light, every non-fighter on the planet dies instantly, as well as some of the weaker warriors. Yes, that includes Roshi, Tien, Yamcha, Krillin, Chaozu, and even the likes of Chi-Chi and Bulma. A scream can be heard across the cosmos, a surge of energy rippling throughout the multiverse, as Goku has just awakened a new level of power. His family is gone, and because Beerus and Champa destroyed the Super Dragon Balls, there's no way of bringing them back. He flashes into Super Saiyan 4 as if it's an effortless transformation. His power continues to rise beyond that of the gods, and eventually it eclipses even that of the angels as his fur turns from the pinkish red hue to a brilliant white. He has surpassed the peak of Saiyan evolution. His power is reaching levels beyond comprehension as Zeno's guards find him. But even this new strength wouldn't be enough to save him from the Omni King's strongest servants. He's ripped limb from limb, the very flesh burned off his bones as he is completely and utterly erased. After making light work of the Earth's strongest defender, they would rush over to Capsule Corp looking for you next. The second Bulma's key disappeared, Boxa teleported home, making sure everything was alright. That's when you had to break the news to her that Bulma was dead. The truth is, you were having a hard time processing what had happened as well. The only thing keeping you tied to your sanity was the fact that your daughter was safe. But then, Zeno's guards arrive. With expert precision and deadly focus, they would rush in, grabbing Boxa by the back of the neck and slamming her onto the ground. They cover her mouth, making sure she can't utter out any spells, and even after turning into her Phoenix Rising form, there's nothing she can do to break free. You transform yourself, yelling at them to let her go, before using the same spell you did against the Grand Priest to erase one of them. Sadly though, you weren't fast enough to get the other. As they still had their hand over Boxa's mouth, they fill her entire body with destructive ki. She's erased from the inside out as you try and stop it, rushing over and disintegrating the guard with every last bit of power you can muster before getting down on your knees and trying to bring her back. Sadly though, there was nothing left. She was completely gone and you were all alone. You would let off a scream of unimaginable pain as your power level rockets past even infinity. With Zeno's guards dead, he sees no reason to continue with this reality, so he raises his hand in the air and erases everything. Or at least, he thinks he does, as for the first time in recorded history, Zeno's powers do not affect one being. And of course that is you. You teleport over to the Omni King's location, which isn't hard since he's the only other thing in existence. You ask him why he did all of this, why he chose to just destroy everything he had created. And to that, Zeno says, in a cold and unexpressive way,
I was bored. They were boring me.
This enrages you to no end. The lives you pledged to protect, the people you cared about, they were nothing more than toys in this god's eyes. Well, now your eyes see nothing but the truth. That and divine justice. You use all of the power you've gained through this new awakening to destroy the Omni King in one fell swoop.
May.
After the Omni King's death, a single solitary moment would pass. You were the only thing left in existence, and this mere moment felt like an eternity. You began reflecting on your entire life's journey, from being a regular kid to fighting in the World Martial Arts Tournament to try and get some money, to fighting against the Saiyans and Frieza, Cell, Majin Buu, and even the gods. The adventures that you had could fill a storybook or at least a 2-hour-long video. And then you decided that now was the time for your story to end. That way many, many more could begin. You just needed to cast one final spell, an incantation that would allow you to spread your energy across the multiverse. You create a brand new reality, one where your friends, your family, everybody you care about are able to live happy. The only catch is, you can't. This reality is one where you never existed, and you're okay with that. Your story's over, and if it means other people's are able to have theirs told, then you're happy with what you got. Although there is one part that didn't sit right with you. If you never existed, then neither would Boxa. That's just not okay. You took her from the moment before she died, and then placed her in an area you knew she'd be safe. The Time Patrol. After obtaining omnipotence, you became aware of everything, and thus the Time Patrol was a group of people you were very much aware of. And knowing that there was no other place where Boxa could survive, you put her there. She was damaged, yes, but still very much alive. So she was able to be healed and became one of their lead patrollers. Now your memory will live on forever within her, even if you yourself aren't able to. But this makes sense, cause like many of you said, you probably wouldn't survive if you were in Dragon Ball.